The Semmelweis reflex. How Dr. Semmelweis influenced the world and how his reflex is still omnipresent. You can see it almost every day, and how that is a problem in learning and changing and healing. When we talk about a reflex, we know about the knee-jerk reflex, which is as soon as you hit the patella, your leg flips up and makes the extension. You don't need to think about it, it just happens. We also know about the Pavlovian reflex. As soon as you're conditioned, the reflex is there. Dogs started salivating as soon as they hear the bell. They don't need to think about it. When you hear an alarm clock, usually you wake up. When you hear your cell phone ringtone, you immediately are conditioned to listen to the phone or to check it or whatever. That's the Pavlovian reflex. We also have the Semmelweis reflex, and that's what this module is all about. When you look at the famous quote about truth, that's really applicable right now. So all truth passes through the 3 stages. First is ridiculed. Secondly, it's violently opposed. And third, it's being accepted as self-evident by author Schopenhauer. So let's go back a few years. Imagine you're living in 1844. 25% of the women with childbed fever died from it. Childbed fever is kind of a blood poisoning. So 25% of the people, 25% of the women who had that type of fever actually died from it. And they already knew the causes. Or at least they had a theory about it. And the theory was either overpopulation of the hospital, maybe a wrong diet, the ventilation in the room was not completely okay, there was dirty linen. And yes, this is all science. It might also be the wrong incense of the priest. And I'm not kidding. That was in 1844. That was a scientific, valid explanation of why women died from childbed fever. Now, Dr. Semmelweis had a radical different idea. And it was not scientifically verified yet. And it was so out of the ordinary and so weird that it was instantly rejected. Because it was so radically different, it just could not be true. However, Dr. Semmelweis didn't give up, and he changed his way of working. As a result of this change, the death rate drops from 25 to a mere 1%. So it had effect. But the theory was so off the chart that every person in the hospital considered Dr. Semmelweis totally insane. And you cannot employ an insane doctor, right? You don't want to be working with an insane doctor in hospital. So the only thing you can do is fire him. And so it happened. He was fired because of his radical ideas, regardless of the facts. As soon as he was left out of the hospital, they changed the way of operating. They changed the way of working back to normal. And the death rate increased from 1 to 25% again. Dr. Semmelweis started working in another hospital. Still convinced of his theory, even though it was very, very weird. But because of this change in his way of working, in this hospital, the death rate dropped from 34 to 1%. Semmelweis was now convinced that his theory was correct. However, his colleagues laughed and about his crazy way of thinking. It was just way too ridiculous for any scientific backing. And finally, Semmelweis was placed in a mental hospital because people who have such outrageous thoughts and think there are things that you cannot see, they must be mentally sick. So now let's take a look at what Semmelweis thought and how the standard way of working was at that time. Remember, it's 1844. At that time, in hospital, there were two main ways that they were helping people. One was child labor, and the other one was autopsy, to learn and to study the human body. And there were not many doctors on staff, so time was precious. And when a woman in labor was brought in, or she started labor, they needed to come into action. Even though they were still doing an autopsy, they were called away. They took their precious instruments and knives with them and rushed to help the woman. Without changing or sterilizing their instruments, without washing their hands, straight from the autopsy into the child labor. Semmelweis' ridiculous theory was that there might be something on the hands or instruments that was carried over from the dead people to the women in labor. Something we cannot see. So he changed his way of working by first washing his hands, cleaning his instruments, after an autopsy, before operating on a woman in labor. He got this crazy idea based on his male colleague who got a cut or a puncture wound in his finger while doing autopsy and got the same childbed fever. Huh. It took 10 years before another scientist, in this case Pasteur, had a similar observation. It took 50 years before Semmelweis' theory was widely accepted. So the Semmelweis effect is a metaphor, the Semmelweis reflex is a metaphor for the reflex-like rejection of new knowledge because it contradicts existing knowledge. Okay. Let's take a look at the following clip. I see a typo, it's not 1 minute, it's a little bit longer, but take a look at the following clip.
Dear Professor Feket, you ask about our progress at Vienna General Hospital. Director Klein insists on the continued practice of bloodletting and other human tortures, though they show no signs of preventing childbed fever. The women lying in are perpetually afraid as they watch the beds around them empty. Jakub Kolečka, my friend and colleague, advises me to step back and let nature have her way. For me, the first ward has become an inferno, a waiting room for death, a flag declaring my failure here.
Good morning, Mother. Elizabeth Muller. Interesting document, this. Your creativity is inspiring, but I'm afraid that I must turn a deaf ear to your speculations. You have a fanciful imagination, Doctor. Petition the Lord with prayer if you must, but remember that childbed fever is the price that he has put on the great gift of bearing a child. Good day, madam, ladies.
When you hold the scalpel, you must hold it very lightly. And when you make your first incision, you must be very bold.
Please. Your students wait. Please.
Semmelweis, go easy. Go easy.
Lord, I can see you don't believe in wasting time. Not long now. Push. Push. Push, Elizabeth Muller. Push.
Most evenings I spend with the cadavers, searching for something beyond the symptoms. The phlebitis, the meningitis, inflammation in the uterus. I wander from room to room.
Aches in my back, in my stomach, and my eyes. Oh,
I know.
I want to see.
I will arrange it. Elizabeth, can you hear me? Be careful.
Father. Yes, Doctor. I have a request. How may I help?
It's the bell. It frightens the women. Must it be rung every time you attend the dying?
Doctor, do I tell you how to proceed?
Please, Father, don't ring that bell anymore. Look at their faces.
Go with God, sir.
Sir, I believe that the protocol of handwashing will...
Come. Ah. Do you enjoy butterflies, Doctor? Hmm?
Sir, with respect, my studies show that weather is not a factor in this container is a solution of chloride of lime that I would ask you all to soak and scrub your hands in before examining any women lying in. Is this understood? You see? Yes.
I beg the instructor's pardon, but why are we being asked to wash?
I have a hypothesis, quite important to an experiment that I'm currently conducting. So, I invite you to indulge me. Like this, with a nail brush. Dr. Kolechka died following an accident with a scalpel in this very room in which he sustained on his finger a wound no greater than a pinprick. The cause of his death was simple blood poisoning. Yet, all of his post-mortem evidence suggests that he could have died of childbed fever. This leads me to believe that childbed fever is caused by conveyance of putrid particles through the agency of examining fingers.
Is it
a dead matter that we carry with us into those rooms following our studies in this room that introduce into the woman's body a contagion that causes fever. This. You make your hands without washing.
Sir, please borrow so much money to learn the ways of traditional medicine.
Fine. If you want to, you can leave the hospital. Transfer to Berlin, where 1 in 3 dies, for Vienna, where all die, murdered by the filthy hands of the very doctors who consider themselves their saviors. Go where you will, but understand, so long as you attend this clinic, so long as I am your instructor, you will do this one thing. You will wash.
Doctor, it has come to my attention that you have enacted a new protocol on the first ward.
Indeed, sir. As a matter of fact,
Is a precise order for the introduction of new protocol, Doctor. Script a formal report. Present this report to your director and then await your director's decision.
The full report will be on your desk before you arrive in the morning, Sir Director.
Not good enough in this case. You instituted a protocol without my counsel. Where is your code of ethics, Doctor?
I only ask that they wash their hands after their work with the cadavers.
A committee of doctors will convene in my office at 2:15 to hear your argument. Be prepared.
You have a gentle touch, Sam. I want you to be my baby's namesake. What is your name, Sam?
Ignaz.
Then your mother? Who is she?
She was Teres.
Teres is a beautiful name.
Dr. Semmelweis? Sir? Not a single woman has showed symptoms of the fever in 24 hours.
as chlorine is the most effective agent in destroying contagion and the putrid odors of death, I deduced that a thorough washing in a solution of chloride of lime would eliminate all contagion.
Dr. Semmelweis, childbed fever is a specific, non-contagious female illness. It is caused by cosmic, telluric influences, a miasma.
Sir, what exactly is a miasma?
It is a noxious emanation.
Influences not of this world.
Not of this world and completely unpredictable, as I've told you many times, Doctor.
You are a learned man, and you have taught me much about medicine. I am attempting to continue the tradition of excellence you instilled in me. I am a doctor in this hospital and an instructor, and I believe that this practice will save lives.
But this is not our way. At this hospital, Doctor, we must be unbending in our practice. At this hospital, doctors practice medicine. The midwifery is left to the women.
Yes, Dr. Semmelweis. We further conclude that our high incidence of fever of late can be attributed to our foreign students with their crude and brutal manners.
We have decided to halve the number of foreign students in the program, and we have also decided not to renew your contract with our hospital. But I do thank you for your services to us, Dr. Semmelweis.
Dr. Stott.
No, thank you. I want to transcribe the notes.
What has happened here?
What has happened here? You are excused, sir. You are...
Wow. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that like totally off the charts? Like we cannot even imagine it anymore. So the classical Semmelweis reflex is a rejection reflex. Being presented with a new idea and people reject the idea without even thinking. And sometimes even violently rejecting the idea. There's also a slightly different reflex. That's the acceptance reflex. It is the acceptance of a new idea without critical thinking. And we are going to get into some more details with that in the exercises. But main thing is the Semmelweis reflex is the rejection of a new idea because it's ridiculous, because it's not ridiculous. The rejection of a new idea because it's counterintuitive, something you have not thought of, or the acceptance of an idea that is somehow remotely resonating with your personal ideas. Okay.
When you learn something from this, comment your biggest insight, and you will inspire other people with your comments too.